attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Virtual Database Administration Chapter meeting. Today we're having a lecture on TempDB Permanent Impact by Paresh Modiwala, and my name is Julie Blomquist. I'm one of the monitors for the virtual chapter. Our sponsor is Hewlett-Packard. And we do want to thank our sponsor for supporting the virtual chapter. PASS has a large number of virtual chapters. You would just go to your PASS login account and associate yourself with another virtual chapter. This way you will only get the emails concerning the chapter meetings, and your information isn't sent anywhere else, but you can get to all these other groups for information. All the virtual chapters do record their presentations, and they are located usually on their archive page. Here are some upcoming SQL Saturdays. These are one-day mini conferences that are held throughout the world. If there's one in your area, go online and to the SQLSaturday.com and register and give it a try. They're wonderful. We have the PASS 2016 Summit coming up. It's October 26th through the 8th is the conference, and there's pre-conference centers sections the 24th to the 25th. Right now until September 18th, it's $21.95, and you could save $150 if you use our registration key. Join a local chapter as well if there's one in your area. This is how you can find out about it, or if you're interested, the PASS organization can help you start a new local chapter. There are quite a few volunteering opportunities with PASS. Just go to the PASS website and do My Volunteering. And here is the information on how to keep in touch with the PASS organization. Today, Paresh Modiwala, he's a senior DBA at Nanth Health in Boston. He's led several large SQL implementations, migrations, and upgrade. He's also been a DBA and managed a DBA manager and a solutions architect at Fortune 100 companies. He also helps organize and speaks at many SQL Saturdays and user groups. He's a certified project manager, a public speaker, an avid singer, cook, open networker, and a stand-up comedian. I didn't know that. He teaches public speaking, debating, and group discussion skills and mentors children around the globe with the circlesofgrowth.com. He comes with almost 17 years of SQL experience and 30-plus years of IT experience. So, Paresh, I'm going to pass this over to you. There you go.
And you can see that, right?
Yes, and like I said, this is being recorded, and we will take questions. Paresh, you want to do that at the end, or do you have stopping points?
I don't mind anyways, literally.
Okay, so just check in with me, and we'll see if there's any questions.
Yeah, sure, and just give a shout in the middle if you have to, because then I can't keep my eye on all the places, right?
That's fine. So I do see your slide deck. Thank you.
Cool. And let me bring this guy down. Okay. Hi guys, how's everyone doing? I hope you guys are doing good. I actually just got off another presentation for the virtual chapter, which was absolutely fabulous too. It was about copy data virtualization, and that is actually going to be 2 or 3 slides from there I'm using here, just in case you need to restore your TempDB, for example, or even back it up for that matter. So as Judy suggested and said, my name is Paresh Modiwala, and we actually went through 15 minutes of prior exercise to teach her how to say my name right, and it seems to have worked very well. So I will go to the next slide now. So I work for Nanth Health. These are my contact informations for you, and TempDB is the topic today, And yes, I like to sing a lot. I've got multiple prizes on that, and for some ridiculous reasons I decided to go get myself a PMP certification, and yes, I got it in the first attempt. It was awesome. And yeah, just yesterday actually I finished my big data course through MIT, and it took like almost 2 months out of my life away. If you guys get a chance, do talk about or go to the big data classes. A lot of it has got to do with whatever you are doing in office or in your personal life. It will really help you a lot. Feel free to shoot me at any of these contact points, either circlesofgrowth.com or Twitter or LinkedIn, and do tweet about this talk today if you find it useful. Even if it is not, feel free to do so. It enhances my learning experience as well. So without much ado, let's go about the topics that I've spoken about earlier. Okay, so digital forensics, database forensics, from DBA to the project manager in 60 minutes flat. Why are DBAs afraid to use tools? This is a comical look actually at why DBAs don't go home at 5 o'clock on Friday evening. And copy data virtualization / management. How do you set up your BI infrastructure, which has been, I think, presented approximately 50 times already, the entire bird's eye view of a BI infrastructure. Network or perish, SQL best practices document, something I presented in past. I have been doing a lot of presentations on SSIS and SSRS as well. So just had a quick thing about, before I go with this who should then, I just wanted to share about 3 Oracle DBAs and 3 SQL DBAs are traveling to past conference, okay? And at the station, the 3 Oracle DBAs buy 1 ticket each, and the SQL DBA buy, the 3 of them, but just buy 1 ticket between them. So the Oracle guys are surprised as always, and they say, you know, what the hell are you guys doing? Why are you buying only 1 ticket? So the SQL DBA said, you know, wait, I will show you why. So when the ticket collector arrives, these guys actually, all the SQL DBAs squeeze into the bathroom. The ticket collector knocks on the door. The DBAs present only 1 ticket, then the ticket collector moves on, and the Oracle guys are absolutely, I mean, bewildered, flabbergasted, whatever. And they said, you know what, next time we got to do the same thing. So on the way back from the past conference, they decide to buy 1 ticket, and now this time the SQL DBAs are not buying any tickets. So we're just wondering what happened here. So he says, why didn't you buy any tickets? So he says, well, you'll see soon. So when the ticket collector arrives, the Oracle people squeeze into the bathroom, but instead of the ticket collector, the SQL DBA knocks on the door. The Oracle guys give him the ticket, and the SQL guys vanish with the ticket into the other bathroom. So that's why I love SQL guys. Why is it not moving? It is. Cool. So who should attend? So DBAs, right? Developers today, and definitely you want developers to be a part of this, managers, people who are DBAs. Very crucial for them. So the agenda for the day, we just have some general information about TempDB. This is not a 500 level course, I would say more like 200 level session. We can go 500 level next time. What are the restrictions on TempDB, for example? What takes up space in TempDB? Allocation of TempDB, how it has changed over these years, and performance improvements in TempDB. The trace flags 1117 and 1118. Who can tell me about 1118? Anybody? The 120 people on the conference there? Okay, we'll talk about it then, don't worry. What is the best way to configure TempDB to avoid contention as such, right? And can you actually back up, restore, relocate snapshot of TempDB? Can you do that? Most people who are not from the latest technology age will say, no, you can't do that. And Julie was asking me, why would you want to back up and restore TempDB? This is one of the things which, if you attended my database forensics class, you would know that TempDB is a storehouse of information, and you really want a point-in-time information as to what was there in the TempDB when you were looking and when somebody made a breach into your databases. So to get a point in time, you can actually take a snapshot of TempDB or backup, as it's in the double quotes. How can you use or minimize the use of TempDB? That's one of the things that we'll talk along the way too. And is your TempDB configured correctly? We can find that out too. So what are the enhancements in SQL 2016? This is something I just added last month, and when I was speaking at the Rhode Island SQL Server user group. Gotta move now. All right. So as we know that the database ID is number 2, the initial weight is like 8 megabytes and 1 megabyte. Till SQL 2014, this was the default, which basically led a lot of people to believe that it's okay to have the initial size of the database to be 8 megabytes and 1 megabyte of the log file. But as we all know, it is not true. Collation is the same as that of the SQL Server. For some reason, this slides are transitioning very slowly, so just put up with me for a couple of seconds. So what are the restrictions on TempDB? Can you add file groups? No, you can't. Can you back up or restore the database in the true sense? No, but there is an asterisk at the end of it, so just remember we'll talk about it in details a little later. Can you create a snapshot of TempDB? So if you can take a backup of it, you can take a snapshot. But generally, no, not the way we know. The snapshot technology that exists in SQL currently, you cannot take that snapshot today. Can you change the database owner for TempDB? No. The owner is SA and it will remain SA. Can you change the collation of TempDB? No, you cannot. Dropping the database. Can you drop the SQL? Can you drop TempDB? No, you can't. You can't drop the guest user from TempDB. And we shall continue what all you cannot do with TempDB. So if it is such an important thing, how come you can't do most of the things on it? Can you enable change data capture on it? Literally no. Participating in database mirroring? No, you can't do that. Can you remove the primary file group or the primary data file or the log file? No, you cannot. Can you rename the database or the primary file group? No, you cannot. Can you run dbcc checkalog against TempDB? No, you cannot. Can you run the dbcc check catalog? No, you cannot. Can you set the database offline? No, you cannot. So these are the restrictions. Still, we love TempDB so much. And can you create or change the primary file group to read-only? No, we cannot. Let's continue that. So what takes up space in TempDB? So I have a script that actually will help you find out what is currently occupying your TempDB, and I will share that with Julie, and then she can actually put it up on your website, or I don't know how she would share that with you. So from a feature perspective, right, queries take a lot of space, right? Triggers do take a lot of space. Snapshot isolation and read RCSI takes a lot of space in your TempDB. Definitely keep in mind that thing. Multiple active result sets, who are still using that, or who's really exploiting this to the most? Anybody with a show of hands? If you can make it interactive, that would be awesome. Okay. And in the end, I also have some bibliography as to where I got my information and all that from. So, and some of this is my own findings, some of them is from various blogs, etc., but kind of consolidated in one place. Online index creation also takes a lot of space in TempDB, especially if it's your enterprise edition. Temporary tables, temporary variables, and table valued functions. There's one thing that also takes a lot of space on TempDB. This I definitely need some sort of an answer from the group here. It's a dbcc command. Anybody know what it takes? What dbcc command are we talking about? Anybody responding there?
No, I don't see
Julie, do
anything
you
in,
see any?
I don't see anything in the
Okay.
chat.
Okay, so the main command that we're talking about is dbcc checkdb, and that takes a lot of space in TempDB. That's why you want to be very careful when you run this on a production server during production hours. Don't do that. How would you then go ahead and check any consistency of the databases or something like that? We will catch up on that when we talk about how to back up and restore TempDB or take a snapshot of TempDB. That same technology can be used for your other production databases if you have to run snapshot, the checkDB against that. Furthermore, sec. Sorry, I have to have a sip of water. The LOB parameters take a lot of space. Cursors, our favorite bane in DBS world, where you don't like the developers to use cursors, because they also take a lot of space in TempDB, and because it is running out of TempDB, it's almost essentially going to your disks. Service broker and event viewers, the event notification take up a lot of space in your TempDB too. If you have LOB variables, they take up a lot of space as well. What about query notifications? I don't know if you guys are using query notifications. We actually stopped using them several months ago. It's pointless. Database mail is awesome, but it still takes a lot of space in TempDB, so just watch out against that too. Index creation, we already thought of that earlier, online index creation. And user-defined functions. Story of a DBS life, burning candle from both ends. Move. Okay, so what happened in the allocation changes in TempDB? This is something that really started changing in SQL 2005. So the idea of that was that, the allocation system for its pages was since changed to reduce the possibility of contention, and that started in SQL 2005, and there is now a significant amount of cache for temporary tables. So allocation system basically changed in 2005. Okay. Then when a temporary object is dropped or something like that, or when the TempDB is recreated, what happens is that instead of all the pages being deallocated completely, one IAM page is kept and one data page is kept allocated. So based on that, it is actually able to recreate everything very quickly. That saves a lot of time in recreating, and also prevents a lot of contention right there. So performance improvement. Temporary tables and table variables can now be cached. The other advantage of this is that you can actually now have your TempDB as we do on a SSD as against the conventional storage. So, if you have limited budget and you have only SSDs for very restricted amount of data, or the amount of SSDs available in your organization is significantly small, then I would use them for your log files and your TempDB files and not for your data files, because that is what will really help you a lot in the performance. So the allocation page latching protocol is improved. Okay, so the update latches, it reduces the number of update latches that are used. Again, latches are a lightweight lock that is based in memory for you. Logging overheads for TempDB is also reduced. How? Because this now is reducing the I/O bandwidth consumption of the TempDB log file. Sets up additional multiple TempDB files during new instance installation. So you can actually do that and you can now create multiple files at the very install of it. In the command-based installs, you could actually have a database engine configuration section where you can actually say SQL TempDB file count, how much it should be, and it will go ahead and do that. So here's a question for you. So I hope there's not too many Oracle people here, but I like to do this all the time on Oracle people. So there's a room full of gold, okay, and in that room was a Oracle DBA. There's there's an intelligent Oracle DBA. There's intelligent SQL DBA, and there was Superman. So who got that gold? Anybody wants to hazard a guess? The intelligent SQL DBA got the pot of gold because the rest of them are fictitious characters. There is nothing like an Oracle guy who is super intelligent. So by default, it used to be that, okay, let's set up as many TempDB files as the CPU count, okay, whichever is lower. There is a formula which is given, which we'll talk about a little later. This came out of Brent Ozar's website and his blog. So the trace flags, if you have not used the trace flags for TempDB, right, this is something, if you are still not on SQL 2016, I would suggest using at least 1118 so that there is significantly less amount of page splits, etc., and it will fill up all the full extents if you turn on the trace flag 1118. There is a knowledge article 215 4845 for you to read. That's just one of those million articles that are there. But definitely the 1117 is awesome. It grows all the files in a group equally. It's not ideal for you if it is a multi-hosting SQL server. So if there are multiple databases which in themselves are heavy-duty users of TempDB or even the storage, you may really want to be careful, because if one file grows, everything else grows at the same time, and that can quickly fill up your, so if it is your TempDB, I mean your storage drive, so if you have to do it in a 1 or 2 database kind of system, then this may not be a bad idea. So trace flag 1118 is now a default in SQL 2016. So one other question, okay? What is the right size of my TempDB in a new production environment, for example, right? How do you go about planning your capacity? Can we make this interactive? Anybody wants to come up with a couple of suggestions, ideas? I have the answers for you, so don't worry, I'm not trying to go along as you give me the answers, but I want to see if anybody has had their cup of coffee and wants to talk about their ideas.
So feel free to put information in the chat window.
I'll wait like 5 seconds. Okay, nothing. So let's go ahead. Then, like all typical DBA questions that we get, the answer is depends. So what does it really depend on? Because what happens is that determining the right size of TempDB in a new production environment or an existing environment depends on many, many factors. So there's no real thumb rule. So again, it all depends. So what it suggests is that based on the requirements or the server usage or user database size, table size, existing workload, SQL Server features, etc., you should plan for your capacity. How do you go about doing it, for example? Use this in QA, for example, in lower regions. If you have some bulk data input happening, monitor how your TempDB grows, record it. If you have index creation going on, go ahead and record how much TempDB space it is using. If you are running any large any scripts that are creating large TempDB objects, record that. And do not do this only during the lean time. Do it during or simulate the production timing. For example, get somebody to do your load testing, like simulating 50 or 100 connections at the same time, maybe 2,000 connections, and then extrapolate the results to your actual production traffic. And you will see that at the end of it, that the TempDB on the single tenant system grew by 40 gigs, whereas I originally started with 40 gigs, now it is 80 gigs. So if this is the only database on your server, then what you really want to do is you want to take that size as a guide, add some more to it, say 20% for example, and then when you create the TempDB on the production server, make sure that the original size is set to be that exact size. Get it? So that way there is not much energy that is spent on expanding your TempDB. So in the QA region, keep the TempDB to autogrow and record it when it is at the maximum size, and use that as some sort of a guide when you are providing for TempDB in production. Okay. Then if you create a job that would actually help you do this, right? That is, create a SQL Server job to monitor the TempDB at peak and non-peak time. Use that as a serious guide, and that could contain all of the jobs that we mentioned earlier. It could be in online index creation, a lot of use of cursors, and so on. Database mailing, everything should be taken into consideration. Do this in QA. I cannot say this enough number of times. Execute the queries, all of these, and just see what is the size impact on your product, QA, the TempDB, and go ahead and record this. If you have any knowledge sharing tool like Wiki or SharePoint, make sure that you record all this information over there, because the DBA, no matter what you do, everything that you do is always under the microscope, because remember, we are going to always be the biggest cost center in the entire IT department. So, okay. Now, in configuration, this is something I think who told me this. If you have not heard the name, George Walters from Microsoft, he mentioned this, that whenever you are doing or configuring your SQL Server in Azure, then make sure that you do not put your TempDB, which by default you would put it on a TempDB if it is on a D drive, if it is just a 2-drive server, because D drive, according to Microsoft's agreement, can be taken away anytime. So do not put any user databases or temp database on the D drive in your Azure. That is the most important thing you want to take care when you're talking about TempDB in Azure. So if you're using TDE, I don't know how many of you use TDE here, but if you are using TDE, definitely make sure use the TempDB on the fastest possible disk, because this will definitely affect your performance, because that also encrypts the TempDB, because you don't want somebody to have a backdoor entry into TempDB and try to get the data out of there. By the way, do you know that one of the single safest place for somebody who is hacking into your system or prying into your important data, the best way, the best place for them to keep those temporary tables or permanent tables inside of TempDB, because most people do not run traces against TempDB. So if they are, then they copy the entire data into TempDB, then they can go ahead and do whatever they want to do with it in TempDB. So monitoring TempDB for any unusual query patterns is also very crucial. Placement of TempDB files. No matter what you're using, whether you're using SAN or still the old direct attached storage, very crucial that you consider where you want to put them. What we do is typically we have a separate SSD-based LUN only for TempDB on a SQL Server. How large should it be? we really don't have the grassroots level questionnaire that I told you in the first one here, the capacity planning. We did not have this information available to us when we started creating. So we just took a guess. For example, for our SQL Server, which is 1.5 terabytes, we have a TempDB drive which is 100 gigabytes, and we have taken up 79% of that drive for TempDB, because at 80% the flag goes off in our server monitoring system. And these are the things you need to watch out against, that yes, if you go ahead and have the TempDB occupy all the space, then it is very difficult for you to be able to grow, because say for example you are at 99% right now, you cannot grow, because to get storage from your storage infrastructure people is like really getting a root canal done without anesthesia. So when you're doing that, whereas when it is capped at 80%, you will realize that, oh, now it can still grow by 20%. It gives me some chance to follow the procedures in the organization to request for more storage. Remember, because if you did not plan for this and you try to make this as an emergency for the infrastructure people, they will not be very happy. So placement of TempDB files, crucial. The TempDB number of files myth. When I started taking up, it was only one file because we didn't have too much disk space. There were always the slow storage that were attached to a server, and the largest one we had was 156 gigabytes. So this is, I don't remember from where I took it, but you might just want to watch it. So this is, if the number of cores is less than 8, then the number of data files is equal to the number of cores. If it is between 8 and 32, number of cores divided by 2. If it is greater than 32, number of cores divided by 4. This has slightly changed, and now they strongly recommend not to have more than 8 files, no matter what. So things have changed, but this is generally a good gospel truth. If you have more than 64 anyways, you don't want to create 16 files. Okay, now I wanted to show you the copy data virtualization, the method of taking TempDBs as a backup. You can actually restore it, or even take a snapshot. So how would that work for you, for example? So as you can see, this is like a third-party solution that you have here. It could be a virtual machine, it could be their own proprietary black box, which has an attached storage that comes with it. And to the left, you can see that this is your SQL Server here, right? And with any of the ways in which you can attach storage to it, either a direct attached storage array or NAS speaker. This is actually taken from one of the companies called Actifio. So what this would do is essentially that when the time comes to do a backup, it will actually quiesce your SQL Server, which basically means that it will momentarily stop your SQL service so that it can take a snapshot of the blocks of data as they exist at that point in time. So to do that, it will actually present this disk to it, like present it as a mounted LUN. And the APIs built into these kind of applications will actually go ahead and take the change blocks from the previous full backup and add it to this master backup, and then it will again detach itself, and at the end of it, what it will do is it will merge all the backups into, as you can see in the new ones here, each of those snapshots that you take is an individual line from which you can just click and you can say, okay, go ahead and restore me this copy. So all of these backups that you take, they're not really backups, they are just the snapshots of the drive system on which your SQL data resides. So that is how you can actually take a copy of the TempDB by taking a snapshot using this quiescing technology, which ensures that nothing from the TempDB is erased. Why would you want to do that? In database forensics, for example, if you want to find out what was going on prior to a breach or a corruption of database, this is the perfect way for you to go about doing it, is to have some solution like this available. There are multiple vendors now, including NetApp itself has slightly less glorified and less automated way of taking these snapshots and presenting it to wherever you want it to. And you can then toy around with the TempDB as much as you want without actually affecting anything at all. So remember, that's the way to do it. So, okay, I don't know SQL. So how does this work really? So let's take a look. So this is your production system. You have one master copy, and then you can run a clone against it, which would essentially mean that you have obfuscated data, encrypted data, everything that basically covers or hides all your PII, PHI, and PCI data. And you can then go ahead and present it to the DevOps or multiple people to do the copy. To do the analysis with the same exact copy of the database. And this should not have gone back. Okay, sorry. So, for example, if there was a breach in your company or some corruption intended or otherwise, and you want to get to the bottom of it, this is a very good way of doing it. Now you can have 7, 10 people working on the same copy of TempDB that can actually help you troubleshoot what happened in that time at the time, or the TempDB at the time. Now we can go to the next one. So the out-of-the-box enhancements for TempDB in SQL 2016 reduces its contention issues by default by having multiple temp data files. Okay, so remember I told you earlier that the original size that was recommended was 8 megabytes. Now we all know that that is absolutely laughable. Why would you have a TempDB that is 8 megabytes? So this is where they actually listened. Trace flag 1117 and 1118 are now enabled by default. Remember this helps you reduce the contention of PFS, GM, and SGAM pages, and make sure do not when you, okay, I'm trying to rephrase this in the best possible way. Don't forget to ensure that you size your data files to your workload and that it is not done automatically. Please put in plenty of time before you go ahead and configure your TempDB files. Now, the other thing is that you can also actually tell it upfront where you want the drives to go. So, which was not originally the case. You could not always do that, and they all went in the same place as your master or the other system files that went into. So how will you size the TempDB now? So if you have actually installed SQL 2016 in your environment, you would have come across this screen, which should show up in a moment. Come on, baby. Wow, here you go. Can you see this clearly, or you want me to make this a little larger, or how do you want to make this? I'm going to assume that you guys can actually see it. So as you can see on the left side, this one here, there is a folder for TempDB which you can do ahead of time. What is slightly ridiculous for me is that why is TempDB screen not a separate one and it just exists as a tab in a big screen? I would have loved to see this TempDB as a different screen altogether. But then Microsoft within the next couple of releases might actually listen to us, and we have TempDB data files and log files directory that you can provide at the very install, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, this was in 2014, right? It was very easy to skip it because remember, we are so used to doing all of the SQL installations in a spousal mode, which means that all you can say is yes, next, right? And that page here on the left side was very easy to bypass. You could very easily forget where it was, that you could actually go ahead and configure that. So now in SQL 2016, they give you a separate tab for TempDB where you can do multiple things. You can actually define the number of files, as you can see over here. The the initial size, how much do you want it to be, what is the auto growth size, and what is the initial size, and what is the maximum auto growth that you want. The database directories that you want, and the same thing with the log files. I totally love this. I wish they had somehow made a different page for it as against a tab in the existing install process. But then I'm just a DBA. Okay. So how will you minimize the TempDB utilization, right? So, for example, CTE abuse, that's a classic thing that leads to performance degradation, right? So just keep a few things in mind. Use fewer temp tables and temp table variables. That'll keep you happy forever. Do not use large CTEs that are referenced multiple times in a query. And don't just turn it on for all databases, since you have been told it's better than no log option. But I don't believe it, so wait. Always test your snapshot and RC isolation levels. That will help you cut down the TempDB utilization. I still don't know how 6 came before 3. Balance between the number of temp tables against a large query. Test it in QA or low regions and then put it in production. Avoid unnecessary cursors, right? Because remember that do not turn it just on for all databases. And avoid overuse of LOB types like max, XML, max varchars, or nvarchar, and so on. Be scientific about what you're doing there. Try to avoid spools, okay? Eager spools, lazy spools. Just be very reasonable with the amount of data you're getting back from your queries. Do not use Mars. If you're using Mars, I would strongly suggest avoid using that, for example. And enabling triggers for bulk operations. This is something I stopped doing, believe it or not, about 8 years ago. Since then I haven't done it, and since then I have not even been a developer, so, but I can tell you don't do this if you're already doing it. Keep your transactions short and sweet. In and out of your database in no time will keep you happy forever and forever. We do have some demos, so don't go away yet. And one of the things that people think that because TempDB is never going to be deleted, so let's keep TempDB as everyone's default database, which is an extra overhead for the TempDB to handle. I would rather have MasterDB as your default database and take it on. Just keep in mind that some applications require that their associated logins have the specific databases as direct databases. So for example, if your application database name is human resources, then your application user or your service account that needs to work will have this as a default database and not master, but definitely not a TempDB, right? It's got to move faster. Yay, something moved. Cool. Okay, so today what did we do? So we went through a little bit of introduction, how is it born, what is the DB ID, where is it initially created, what are the restrictions on TempDB. We also spoke about the allocation of TempDB, right, and how it changed from SQL 2005 to about now, how performance improvement has been brought along. The trace flag 1117 and 1118, for example, how they are now enabled by default. Is it always good to have these turned on? Again, the classic DB answer is generally yes, but depends. Configuration of TempDB, we discussed about where to put the files, for example, correct? And what should be the maximum size of the database files, for example, that do not completely cover your drive. If you have a 200 gigabyte drive which is meant for TempDB, do not use more than 159 gigs or 160 gigs, because if your server monitoring software or SQL monitoring software is like Idera or I don't know, DPA or SolarWinds or whatever you are using, if they are set to go off at 80% use or crossing the 80% threshold, your email box will be flooded with stuff because TempDB will not shrink automatically. So the best thing to do is keep it at 85%, and if that touches it, you want to take corrective action as quick as possible. Keep in mind that space is not available instantly to you because you have to work with infrastructure people to get the space, and sometimes you may not even have the budget, which means that in the late evening you might actually end up having to go back into the TempDB in the evening and start shrinking it back to the original size. And not pretty, not smart, but you have to do it because you don't have space and because you did not configure it right the first time around. Can we backup, restore, relocate, snapshot? Yes. Of the TempDB, yes we can, and we saw how we can do that. We also discussed some of the tips that I use for minimizing the use of TempDB, for example, right? And some of, how do you know if your TempDB is configured correctly? Well, your users will tell you, and before that you want to know that. So a lot of information that I got so far is from these sources, and I have some of them I remember. One of them is definitely Brent Ozars, great guy, funny guy. He comes to speak in Boston often, and we just have his room automatically. So definitely go to some of these and check it out. Before you do anything, make sure that you have done that in your lower regions. I cannot say this enough number of times. Okay. So, thank you very much, and we will go over to the temp. We'll go to some of the demos that I wanted to show you, and we do have some time. Really, we have some time, right?
Yes, we do. We have until, we have 15 minutes.
14 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have any closing announcements, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, cool. So remember, if nothing works out, you want to make TempDB great again, definitely vote for me in 2016. Thank you, and we will now go over to the demo that I have loaded for you. Some of the demo scripts, some of the things that I said we can't do. For example, we said, you can't do dbcc checkalog. Oh, wait, we did not do this. What I want to do is, it's running against my production server, not very pretty. I'm just going to run it here, for example, right? Okay. So it says cannot be run against TempDB. Check catalog, cannot be run in TempDB. Alter database, TempDB, set it offline. No, you can't do that, right? Can you set alt TempDB read only? No, you can't. Some more coming up. Add file group. You can't add file group to the TempDB. Okay.
So
Can you back up?
I'm not seeing anything shared.
Really? Okay. Thank you. Let me go back here. Thank you, Julie, for saying that. I really appreciate that. Graphic options, output 2. Something showing up now, like this?
Yes, your management studio.
Yes, that's what I was showing. So what I was saying is that we could not add a file group to the TempDB, and as we know, backup in the conventional sense, we cannot do that either. Are not allowed on TempDB, and I'm happy that Microsoft did not give any cryptic error messages here. Can I change this to something else? No, you cannot, because it's a system database. Can you use this to drop the database? No. Again, this is the one that I got from Brent Ozar, for example, right? And it shows you, what is the TempDB speed, how is it doing normally. So you can actually, I can run this against my BI server and or QA server and without killing a few people. That would be awesome. Oh wait, can't do that. Yeah. So you see number of reads, number of writes, average read, stall, whatever it is, in milliseconds, nothing there. It's a good performing system. This has about 196 gigabytes of RAM and it is completely on an SSD, right? This is also on this. Nothing running in on my TempDB currently. This one, is there any page allocation contention, right? Oops. Nothing here. So it's a very well-defined system. I can actually show you how we designed this. So you can see this is kept to little less than 90% or 80% of that, and almost everything is kept at the same size. They are all on a different run totally, just so you know. And see, auto growth is not enabled because it is in production. Okay. So what happened to TempDB, for example? I'm going to try this, and I'm saying put this into so I'm creating this temp table here, begin transaction. This is going to be against my server again, sorry. Dot enter. So what I did was just created a temp table, right? And I'm saying go ahead and give me this information. If I say drop table product, right, because I created that as a temp table, it dropped it. But there are multiple instances of this, right? So if I do this again, 1, 2, it shows this, but then can I actually drop the table? You cannot drop because it does not exist. Why? Because if you look at this very closely, what it does is that it will actually give you a whole bunch of dashes after the name. So I don't know what happened here. It didn't show up. This is there. I just created that. Okay, and so the reason why you can't drop it is because the name doesn't appear exactly the way you see it here. There's a whole bunch of dashes appointed at the end of it. Is because if there are 10,000 users running the same query or subquery for you, then you don't want to drop that table again and again, and then people would have lost data. So remember that when you create a temp table and it shows that it already exists, you may really want to run a query that says, show me the name of this, give me the tables from the sys tables in this database to find out, and you'll find there's like a whole bunch of them over here if you do it multiple number of times. So just watch out for that. I don't want to create the stored procedure yet. Okay, So this pretty much is what I wanted to show you guys on the TempDB that we can or we cannot do. And if you want, we can actually leave this now for Q&A. Let's see if there's anybody has any questions or comments. That would be awesome.
If you have any questions, please type them into the chat window. Oh, we do have some questions. I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat window versus the question window. The slide's not changing. My screen stuck. Screen's fine. Audio cutting. Plain cache. Check the. Oh, see, people were answering. I was just looking in the wrong window. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Start with can you elaborate on database weight?
I don't know if we can do that in the next 2-3 minutes. That would essentially be like a Brent Ozar or Grant Fitchy kind of session, which is they're doing a full session coming up on the pre-cons. All I can say is that if there is a lot of contention on your TempDB, you will see a lot of weights on your database. These weights are most likely not related to CX packet weight or memory allocation weights, but anything because there is contention with the disk subsystems and that it cannot allocate enough number of pages quickly enough because your TempDB is constantly being bombarded. We'll need much more time than this next 2 or 3 minutes, but I gave you something that I could give you in the next 30 seconds. I hope that answered your question.
That's fine. So are you saying not to use CTEs?
Not to use large CTEs multiple number of times in a query. I'm a big fan of CTE because CTE is really much better than cursors any day.
What is the impact of MARS, M-A-R-S, and why not use it?
So multiple active record sets, right? Where will they stay? The memory can't handle it, so they will be in some sort of temporary objects there. I haven't used it in a long time. I hope this answers your question, or at least shoot me. I can actually get back to you with this on much greater detail. Please share your number or email with Julie, and I can get back to you with this.
If you explicitly drop a # temp table, do you still get to take advantage of the restore feature?
So you mean the snapshot that I talked about in the copy data virtualization part of it?
Right.
Yes and no, but because see, remember this change blocks, they are backed up at a given interval, so it's just like your transaction log backup, for example. So if you actually create the copy data virtualization doesn't distinguish on the basis of a transaction, it only distinguishes on the basis of a change block. So when it took a snapshot at say 1:55 p.m., you created something and dropped it at 1:56, whereas your next transaction log backup is happening at 2 p.m., you may not be able to get back to it on TempDB because TempDB transaction log is not being backed up. So technically, no, you can't do that. So if there is a smart intruder, then he can possibly play the system very well. But if not, then definitely they will leave some sort of telltale signs there.
Okay. Other than using the SSMS disks, usage report on TempDB to determine timing of growth, auto growth, and correlating the auto growth times to the query execution data collected via like SolarWinds or IDEA, is there a good way to see what caused TempDB to auto grow excessively?
So that is a query. I actually can share that with you. I don't know if I have it here. I think this is what it is. It will actually give you everything that is in TempDB at a given point in time. I can't run this on my production system because that would be a violation of the HIPAA. but I can run this on my server, but on my server I don't have any data that is actively being pursued right now. So but I can share this query with you definitely. It will actually give you what is there in the memory, what is chewing up the memory, I mean the space in the memory. This is TempDB demo 3 query.
That's great. Any queries you have that you'd like to share, I could upload those to our website along with the slide deck.
Okay, yeah, I will give it to you a little later in the night, because we have a talk about compiled store procedure by Andy Victoria in the Boston SQL Server user group. So from here, I'm going there right now. So.
No problem.
But it's almost on the time, 3 p.m. Just remember, guys, I will be running for the past board of directors. So if you do remember my name, do find time to go ahead and vote for me. I really appreciate that. So I want to take my assisting the SQL community way beyond just the speaking part.
So there are a few other questions. What I'll do is I'll email you the question log, and you can
yes, please.
You can answer them.
You want me to bring up my contact information just in case somebody wants to take a quick peek at that?
Put that back up. That's great.
Yeah.
But I'll be sending the question log over to Paresh, and he can answer them indirectly or directly. Whoops, it's not showing. Oops, here it is. Got it. So you can also email Paresh directly. Like he said, he's getting ready to head over to his local user group meeting. The recording will get posted either today or tomorrow to our archive website for the DBA virtual chapter, and I will also upload slide decks and any scripts he has once I receive them. And thank you very much for speaking. It was very interesting, all the different considerations for TempDB, and thank you for your time on this, and sorry that I was looking at the wrong question chat log.
So one thing I have to say is that I love speaking, but I also like to get feedback, positive, negative. That is what kind of evolves us as speakers and this group, right? If you do not give a feedback, then others might get the same thing that I just told you. And please share your opinions. I don't mind if it is not very civil, that's fine too. But do share that, I'll really appreciate that.
Well, there was one comment in the question log saying that you're funny and made it very interesting, for a topic on TempDB. So you did get some feedback in the question log. So.
Oh, cool! That's awesome.
So yeah, if you want to put feedback in the question log, that's fine. I'll leave it open for another minute or two. Like I said, we want to thank Paresh for speaking today. It's a very interesting topic. Thanks again.
Thanks, folks. Have an absolutely fabulous day. Okay.